Vampires, werewolves, sorcerers, a match made in fantasy heaven? Or could that be horrific? Three booktubing friends are coming at you today to tell you what we thought about this combination of characters and settings in the book Lightfall. Join us. Hi, I'm Jim with Fantasy for the Ages.
I'm Matt with Go Read Books.
And I'm Derek from D&J's Epic Quest.
And we are glad to be back together for another team up. Superhero team up, except we're not superheroes, but we are booktubers and we love to talk about good books. Sometimes we talk about okay books. Once in a while, we might talk about books. We'll find out where this one falls as we work our way through this today. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. And be sure to check out the channels of these two fine gentlemen with me here today. Links to their YouTube channels will be here in the show notes. Definitely worth checking out. So the book we're talking about today is Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This is his debut novel. Just came out this past January. It's listed as book one of the Everlands. I think that's supposed to be a trilogy. These things change as time goes along, but that's my understanding so far. Genre kind of depends what you say. Epic fantasy, maybe dark fantasy. The book has so far received a generally positive response. 4 out of 5 stars on Amazon. That's out of 85 ratings. So not that many ratings yet, but 4 out of 5 over a couple of months. A 3.6 out of 5 on Goodreads with 724 people rating the book. But there are definitely people not getting into this book. Some are DNFing it. Most notably, Mike's Book Reviews did like a 3.5-minute episode highlighting on how he's come to understand in life you just sometimes got to let yourself DNF a book. And then he pulls out Lightfall as his example and went and do a few points on why it just didn't do it for him, though he was careful to say he wasn't discouraging people from trying the debut novel of an author. It just didn't grab him, and life is too short. We may have opinions that come out like that in this conversation, because Derek, Matt, and I mean, we've chatted just briefly about our takes on the book. We've saved most of it for this episode. And I know we have different opinions on the book as a whole, our experiences with it. I finished it first. Then Matt got through it. Derek is the most recent one to have completed it. Today, the first time, raw, right here for you. We're going to dig in depth as to what we thought. So let's get into it. Matt, tell us about the setting of Lightfall, the kind of the context of this story.
Yep, well, the setting, as of course you can see with this book, is a darker fantasy. And I think that's what we got. I think as you look at the book, as you read some descriptions, that's what you get. Is it is a dark fantasy. Maybe not as dark as some other fantasies can get. I would say definitely not grimdark, not even really approaching grimdark. But it is a darker fantasy in some ways, which is appropriate for vampires and werewolves and things like that. Though this is a little different spin, different take on the vampire werewolf story. But yeah, I would say it's a dark fantasy.
Yeah, darkness. Interesting, isn't it? When the name is Lightfall.
Lightfall, right.
Yeah. Derek, kind of bring us up to speed, a summary, a synopsis of this book to give us some structure to what we'll talk about now.
Sure. So we've got a land that is, I guess, seemingly ruled by the vampires. But a century ago, give or take, these mysterious Greys emerged and kind of decimated the vampires. And nobody really knows what they really are. And so now, for the most part, the vampires are kind of confined to their cities, which are kind of spread across the map. There's kind of one in each corner of the continent, and then one in the center. Within these cities, you've got different classes. You've got the like the nobles or the elites, and then you've got the mids, and then the warrens, which would be kind of the bottom of the totem pole. And it seems like these scales are kind of balanced by the blood that the vampires drink. So the elites or the nobles, I can't remember the specific term they were called right now, but they get the best blood from different animals, which was kind of neat to see, like whale, hawk, I think shark was in there. I can't remember some of the other ones. And the warrens on the bottom of the totem pole, they get cow blood. So they still kind of age a little bit. And it seems to keep them basically from being able to uprise against the nobles since they have superior numbers.
See, that's a fascinating part of the book I just want to jump in on. There is that social stratification that's part of it. And like you said, it's controlled in part by controlling the blood supply.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that, but I was like, that's a fascinating part of the story for me. Go on.
So the ruler of the city of Lightfall, his son is killed, or maybe he's murdered. We don't really know. And probably the most main character, Sam, she's basically a maid, I guess. Cleaning rooms, that type of a thing for whoever. Sounds like mostly the nobles. And she finds a clue as to what may have happened to this ruler's son. Leads her to working with a werewolf, a mage, a group called the Leeches, which kind of seem like a small spy group. But things turn out to be a little bit more sinister than maybe just discovering who the murderer
A little bit.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was great. I really appreciated the way you said, because this is one of the knocks maybe against the book, Sam, who sort of kind of maybe is the main character. It takes a while to figure out who are we supposed to pay attention to, and I think that was definitely a knock there. Matt, anything you would add as a key thing for the synopsis of the story?
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
Yeah. There is a lot going on in this story, a lot of layers. You mentioned the blood. We've got vampires who have different abilities because of different types of blood they may use, they may consume. Add to that, you've got these sorcerers who are hired to imbue the blood with additional powers, amp them up, supercharge them, whatever. There's so much complexity. It's like taking vampirism and turning it into a hard magic system.
Yes.
Which maybe won't work for some people. I thought it was a cool twist.
I thought it reminded me a lot of aging whiskey or beer or something, what they were doing with this blood.
That's not where it went for me, but I like that.
Just the different properties and stuff they would.
Kind of getting vibes of Brandon Sanderson.
Definitely.
With this and Mistborn and Allomancy and all the different types of metals and the powers. I mean, there's some real alignment there, I thought. As we just talk about our reactions then to the book here, this is going to be kind of controlled chaos. We're just going to, whoever wants to, as we move through, talk about the things we particularly appreciated. Characters, plot elements, themes, whatever. As well as, anytime you feel like it, throw something out there that you didn't care for or just doesn't work for you. And we'll chew on the stuff. So somebody jump on in.
Well, when I first started this book, now, and I want to preface this by saying I don't think this is the author's fault so much as it is I choose not to read book synopsises. I choose not to listen to a lot of in-depth reviews on books before I read them. There's been a couple of books that has been, well, I wouldn't say fully
ruined,
spoiled.
Yes,
spoiled is the word I was looking for. But has been some things I would have rather have not found out till I read the book has been spoiled for me. When I first read Red Rising, I didn't read the back of the book, and I'm glad I didn't, because the back of the book told one of the biggest surprises in the book. The back of the book told you. So
just mind blowing what they
I stay away from that. So when I first got into this book, or was wanting to read this book, I thought it was completely different than what it ended up being. I came in expecting traditional vampires, traditional werewolves, understanding it'd be in a different type setting, because they're the only ones in the world, but I was still really expecting the horror aspect of it. And within the first couple of chapters, that's not there. And the very fact that there are no mortals in this book, nobody to be scared or afraid of the vampires and werewolves, it takes away the horror aspect. And it's really just even the drinking of the blood, as we've already talked about, is hard magic. And so I was not very thrilled in the first few chapters of this book. And as far as we talked about the main character, the girl, what was her name again?
Sam.
I didn't dislike her character. It just wasn't what I was wanting out of this book. But I kept reading. I did not want to DNF. I don't like to DNF books, and I'm fine with people who decide to DNF books. It's none of my business. I just try to really push as far as I can before I eventually would DNF a book. And for me, it took close to 90 pages for me to find something that really interested me. And what happened is finally I just accepted that this isn't what I was looking for. Again, not the author's fault. This wasn't what I was looking for, but just try to find something to enjoy. And when I would say the first werewolf character was introduced, about 90 or so pages in, which is part 2, is really where I found something to wrap myself around and to cling to. And it progressively got better from there up into the 50% point where I was pretty well invested in the story and enjoying pretty much everything going on. I'm not, and there's several things. There's a couple of reasons why this is the case. Now, I've already said because I went in expecting traditional horror, which I enjoy. Also, I'm not the biggest fan of hard magic. That's my least favorite thing about Brandon Sanderson's works. And it seems like a lot of authors are going hard into hard magic, and it's fine. It's not the most enjoyable for me. I like the mystery of magic instead of magic becoming a science and something you have to put together, drink this, absorb this metal, drink this blood to have this power. Not my favorite. So that's also was a reason why it was a little more difficult.
Yeah, hearing that, it makes sense that you struggled with it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, totally.
But once I got past that and accepted it, there is a lot to enjoy here.
Yeah, I went into this book pretty blind. Just Derek said it'd be a good book. Do we want to read this? So I'm like, all right, let's try it.
No, that was Matt. Matt picked this one.
Was it Matt? You were the one that actually picked this book?
Yeah, I was, but
I knew I was the Johnny come lately on it. I'm like, sure, okay, fine, we'll read it. And then it's funny that I read it before either of you. But I went into it just totally blind. And yeah, I found right away, it's just a fantasy story that happens to be about vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. But I thought it was fascinating in 2 ways that kind of interested me right from get-go. One, that it's partly a murder mystery. I mean, there's the intrigue. It starts with that catalyst event that the prince is outside the city dead, and that never should have happened. What? How? And clearly there are layers and layers and layers of intrigue going on. So that was captivating for me. But then also learning that this is a place where there aren't humans. Or are there? And that's something that's sucking me in more. Clearly, humans are known of as something of legend, of myth. Probably never, the boogeyman, probably nothing that ever existed. I'm not so convinced. I'm pretty sure as I've read it, this could be just our world thousands of years in the future. And something happened. We probably did it to ourselves. And the humans were mostly wiped out. And all you have are these beings now who are far more elevated and more conscious with culture and societies. I think that's fascinating. And I think they're going to circle back to bringing the humans into play. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I agree.
Thoughts are exciting me about the book. Yeah. Derek, jump in with something.
I've kept having thoughts throughout this book that I felt like the vampires were the humans. Something, maybe long ago in the past happened and they transformed or whatever. And I don't know what they had this event, what the great,
enlightening or something.
Yeah. I can't remember what that was called, but there was part of me that kept thinking these werewolves, these vampires, maybe something happened and that's who they are. And then you've got this cult of Humanus was interesting. That was probably one of the more interesting aspects, I thought. And one thing that stuck out, I keep thinking about, is one of the sorcerers said that the sorcerers are born as adults. I don't know if you guys remember that at all.
Yeah.
So, well, that's kind of interesting. So that was some of the stuff I liked.
I never fully understood that. I just accepted it.
Yes, exactly. Asexual production. I have no idea what's going on there.
Right. And actually, so you Jim, you mentioned something that was another strike against it at the beginning for me. I was expecting traditional horror. I'm not a big fan of hard magic, and I haven't hardly found a whodunit that I've enjoyed yet. Not when it's just a whodunit, that type of a story.
Right.
So But again, the further you push through, I think this book becomes more rewarding the further you push through it.
Now, Matt, you mentioned how, and I completely agree, the book takes a step up when Raven, the werewolf, is introduced as a character. It's
Right.
like that. I mean, the werewolves are cool, and that element of the story, fascinating. A lot to just be entertained by. Her presence, the way she carries herself, her capabilities, the fact that she walks around naked all the time as a human and is kind of like, what's your problem? You know, it's just normal. It was just a subtle level of humor in there because it's making people uncomfortable, but they shouldn't be because it's normal. Yeah, I'm just laughing. Are we all agreed Raven is a cool character?
Raven was probably my favorite.
She was my favorite as well. Part of that, and it's more to it, but she felt the most like what I was looking for in, especially the opening scene where they introduce her, the vicious open scene, and then the sequence that goes on in her following chapters where she's hunting down certain individuals and really stalking them, and there's a little bit of the horror element.
She's dangerous.
She's dangerous. To me, that was completely absent in the vampire story. Any element of, I don't want to be around these people. But Raven, I wouldn't want to meet her in the woods at night. And she was just a compelling character, I felt.
Yeah. And where this book leaves off, I'm not going to say too much about it, but it's clear we're going to get a lot more about werewolves in book 2.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. The element that is also rather fascinating here, we mentioned the sorcerers, and there's knowledge that they have that not all of them have. There's different levels of things, but there's a lot of mystery behind the sorcerers that has to be unpacked still. And in this book, we really just got teases of that. We got pieces.
Well, for one thing, now this, I may say this and y'all may say, well, that was explained in the book. If it was, I missed it. Why are this lower group, the group that the RPOV characters of sorcerers are in, why are they called sorcerers when they can't do any magic? There's something there that I feel like maybe we're not supposed to know yet. Derek, you had talked about maybe the vampires were once humans. I kind of wondered, well, is there more of a human connection with this particular group? Because there's nothing about them other maybe than the way they were formed that sets them aside from regular people, really, unless I missed something.
Well, except as I see it, there aren't any regular people. You are either a sorcerer or a werewolf or a vampire. You're one of the three.
But I guess my question is, what sets aside that particular group of sorcerers from regular people?
Couldn't they read minds? Wasn't that them, that group?
No, I think
to an extent.
Is that still a power?
I think there was no fantastical elements about that group.
Right.
They were just the historians.
Magic blind. They had nothing.
Right. And so basically, in every way that we would look at them, they were kind of like humans. It's just that's just kept coming up to me in my mind as I read it. I may have born
as an adult.
Right.
There's
That's
that.
Right.
Whatever that is, there's that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess they're the most human-like would be a better way of saying that.
Although part of why we found, and maybe Matt, part of why you found the vampires less interesting is they're also a little too human-like. There's not so much horror element with the vampires at all. They're just people.
You take away their prey, which in traditional horror is humans, and they're just regular. They're just regular people that drinks different types of blood.
Yep, with all the positives and the negatives that we see in mankind. I mean, there was heroic ones. There were schmucks. I mean, Rufus is the character just built for us to hate so well, the Prince Rufus. And he is bad. I mean, that scene in the woods when he's chasing Sam and her friend and what he does to the friend
was pretty brutal.
Oh, brutal is the exact word. And sadistic. It's like,
Right. And I know the way some people would criticize that would call it a mustache twirling bad guy that almost makes no sense or just so bad it makes no sense. No, I never felt that way about him. I felt like his badness made sense with the story. I don't feel like it was cartoonish in any way.
No, no. It's the absolute of entitlement, and it ties into the social stratification.
There you go.
Which
Right.
we got in this book very clearly that has not always been the case in vampire society. That's a more recent development. And that's part, I think, what we're going to get more as the trilogy goes on, the understanding of why that came about. As the vampire civilization came under more and more strain, that this social stratification was put into place, and the classes, the elitism, and there's reasons, but it didn't have to be that way. Yet Rufus manifests that it is that way by destiny. He truly is better than Sam, than the dirt under his feet. And he deserves to be the elite, flying through the air and playing with the toys as he wishes. It's like, wow.
I also thought the political intrigue was done well in this book, because there's a lot of that. You're dealing with the politics of how they run things, and particularly this family we're talking about who runs the city. I'm forgetting the name of the city. It's been over 2 months since I read this book. What's the name of the city?
Lightfall?
No, the book is Lightfall.
Right.
The city is close to that. I have it in my notes because I knew First Light.
First Light.
There it is. Because I knew I was going to blank too. First Light.
I should have written some of this down. But anyway, yeah, First Light. So the family that's over First Light. I enjoyed a lot of that political intrigue between the ruler, if that's what you call him, and maybe his... the
Count. Of course, it's a vampire.
Right. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Now, Derek, you mentioned the leeches. We haven't said anything about them yet. You know, in your summary, you mentioned them a little bit, this group of kind of like spies and stuff. And that was another very cool element to the story. I mean, the leeches are made up of who? Which class? We're talking about
the mids and the Warrens. Yeah, not well. I guess the leader she's
hiding in plain sight. One of these elites. Yeah. So it's this like counterculture here in the vampire city, and it has its roots back in how it wasn't always like this. How there used to be more egalitarianism, equality amongst all vampires, and something caused that to change. The leeches are the counterbalance to try to put things right again. But the leeches then are also the ones willing to work beyond their boundaries. So that's why Raven is right there, you know, willing to help out. And the sorcerers are kind of welcomed into the conversation. But I thought that undertone to the story was great. And that's where we get the tie-in to the city of Lightfall, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
But something tragic happened there. And we have one key character here, and her name escapes me. Maybe one of you will remember. Kind of Alana's right-hand person.
I remember the character. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, what was it? But she was clearly from Lightfall. And she has some special abilities that have not been fully explained yet. But they're not vampiric abilities. It's almost like she has some magical abilities. She can do things normal vampires can't do.
It's not Sage, is it?
What?
Sage?
Was that Sage?
Alana was she was like the right hand.
No, Alana was the
leader
head
of
the leeches, wasn't that? Alana was the head of it. And it
was Lady something, wasn't it?
Lady Alana. I thought.
Was it?
It is so hard. Again, I read this 2 months ago.
No, it's Lady Holquard, and then Alana is her.
Okay. I was getting the names blended. Okay.
And I don't remember what her first name was, but wasn't she from Last Light, which was kind of that city on the other side of there's like I don't know if you want to call it like a strait.
Well, it's a city that doesn't exist anymore because it fell. But I thought it was called Lightfall. Maybe it was called Last Light.
Last Light is the one that's, I don't want to say across the ocean, but it's not on the main continent. And something happened there.
It was the best of the cities, though. It was the special place. It was the peak of vampire society. And something happened. Yeah.
Right. She was there. I do remember that.
So that's more mystery that will be coming out here. But, you know, the Countess, the head of the leeches, should be dead, but isn't because of something Alana could do. It's like, And she's got some badass fighting abilities we saw on display when Sam was gonna be torched, popsicled. I don't know, what do they call it when she was sitting there in front of the sun, and Alana shows up to save the day, walks up in her little red hood and takes out a whole bunch of guards. That was a cool scene. But again, Alana can do things typical vampires can't. It goes back to her roots, her history. I want to know more.
That was one of the things that, like that scene you're talking about where she's supposed to get torched. You know, I never really felt any danger for Sam, whatever situation she was in. And that kind of, I don't want to say it bugged me, but
you were feeling the plot armor. Yes.
Yeah, I want to feel nervous for a character. Like, okay, they might not actually make it out of this. And in some cases, in some books, they don't, right? But this one, it felt like any situation, even, you know, you could make up whatever you want in your head now, and she would survive it.
Right. I felt that too. I think that, and part of that, of course, reading other books like Malazan, where nobody's safe at any particular time. It doesn't matter how popular they are in the series; they could die. I never felt that for her. I would agree with that.
Yeah,
you knew if anybody was going to make it to the end, you knew it was going to be Sam.
It took a little while for me to get to that point where I could tell Sam is definitely our focus character, because she was one of a few characters we're learning a lot about in that first section of the book. But it gels, and you finally get, okay, Sam's the linchpin. So yeah, Sam's not going to die in this book because she's the lodestone to everyone else. It's Sam. And we're getting the story really through Sam's experience of the story.
Right. And I think in some horror books or slasher books, sometimes they call that the last girl, the final girl, something like that.
Final girl, yeah.
Well, I think Sam was our final girl in this book, if you could make that comparison.
I love the final girl trope. I could do a whole episode just on the final girl. All right. Other things that really worked for you or that didn't, that you want to toss in here?
One thing I thought was pretty interesting, and I don't think I've seen it in any other book that I've read, but they like they had like a stock market essentially for their blood.
Yes,
I thought that
they
was
were
kind of
trading
cool.
futures on it, basically.
Yeah, that was neat. It was just like, I thought the world building, like that type of stuff, was really good. Like I wanted to maybe like not that specific part of it, but I thought that was a neat addition. But these other cities and stuff, like I want to explore those, and that's probably the biggest reason I'll continue reading, is I'm hoping we're going to go other places on the map here.
Yeah.
Right. We were very locked in to small locations. Of course, that was the point you were supposed to be. I look forward or hope that they dive more into, because we heard a lot about vampire culture. We heard a good bit about sorcerer culture, but we really didn't hear much of anything about werewolf culture. And I hope that that's explored further in the next series.
That seemed to be what it was setting up for the primary focus of book 2. One thing that I got in book 1 that differed from the way you described the synopsis before, Derek, was that I don't think there are any more vampire cities at this point. I think that's part of the point and why everything's here in First Light. I think all the other cities have failed. I think this is it, the last bastion of vampirism, because the Greys have been out there and have really, wreaked havoc and won time after time. And this has been the fallback. This is why no one goes outside the city. This is where they are safe, and anywhere else, they're in peril. Did I misread that?
No, maybe not. Maybe I just didn't word it that well. I know I looked at the map a few times because there is an icon on there to show that the cities have been abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, so you've got First Light, which is in the northeast corner of the continent. And then, I don't know how you guys said it, you got Luch in the southwest. And then Last Light, which is across the canal or whatever. Those are the ones that show that they are still inhabited. And then you've got the Cult of Humanus, which is off to the west, Lightfall in the center, Shadowfall in the northwest, and Dawn Death in the southeast that have been abandoned.
Okay, so you're saying the map, and I can say I didn't spend a lot of time studying the map. You're saying the map.
I don't even think I looked at it.
Yeah, you're suggesting.
Oh, I love looking at the maps. It's one of my favorites.
He geeks out on maps. We got this now. All right. That goes well with Malazan, by the way. You're suggesting that the map is saying there are a couple other cities that maybe haven't been abandoned yet.
or at least not completely. I think you're correct in that, this main city is probably the most populated.
And we get, and again, spoiler episode here, people. So I'm going to say something now. If you haven't read this book, you don't want to know this. So stop now. Okay. We get pretty clear in this book that this whole situation the vampires are under, the stress, being attacked by the Greys and therefore having to fall into this classification. And we know people who are manipulating the situation for their own benefit. It's all artificial. It's all being created to advance certain vampires' agendas. That's why the blood's controlled. The Greys are created. That it's just all smoke and mirrors. I mean, there's real damage being done, but it's not the great mystery it really was. It's all just a show, a political power play. And wow, a lot of people are really miserable in the vampire culture because of a few elites at the top who have perpetuated this scam on the entire civilization. This information's got to come out. And that's, I think, part of where the trilogy is going to go.
Finding that information out was a pretty big surprise to me. I didn't see it coming. I was trying to think of what we were going to run into. And I mean, that was not on my radar at all.
Agreed. Didn't see
what we were going to get.
I was convinced that the Greys were humans, where
it was a possibility.
And I think we may have been led. I feel like it was leading us that way, or at least me. That's how I felt. Where in our world, a horror story, you have the vampires and werewolves hunting down people. Well, in this, it's the people hunting down vampires. And with that reveal, I don't think that's on accident. That probably that is a political commentary on times, maybe pulling a little bit probably from the way the author views those things, which is interesting to see. Sure. But at the same time, I don't think it was ever preachy.
No.
An author may have certain political views or religious views or any views, and sometimes it can feel preachy. I never felt that way reading this, though it was still there. It was still present. You could tell there was capitalism wasn't appreciated.
Corporate greed, political machinations for their own benefit. Yeah, there's some biases, definitely. I am totally with you. If I feel an author has an agenda and is pushing it, preachy, yeah, that's a turnoff for me. I don't mind if their own beliefs ooze into their story, but don't make me feel like I'm inferior if I don't agree with you, kind of thing.
Even if it's my views, I don't like to see someone who would share my views to push it in fantasy. I don't know that that's the place for that.
Yeah.
When it gets a little too pushy. You can express those things and you can provide commentary in a way that fits a story and not feels like when the reader is reading and they say, well, this author wants me to know something. I can tell.
We go to fiction to escape.
Right. Absolutely.
Not to have to deal with modern day struggle again in a new way. All right. We have covered some great territory. Is there anything else we definitely should talk about before we move into a few last thoughts from our outline?
I guess, Matt, I would just agree with you. I felt like I was being led to believe that the Greys could be the humans, that we were looking for. And I guess, again, Jim, to go with your spoiler warning there, if you haven't read it, you should probably not listen again. But, when we found out that it was bullets in that vault,
right?
Again, I could not think of what it was going to be, and maybe it was obvious to other readers out there or not. But again, I didn't see that coming. The whole time I was reading this, I was wondering, what the heck do they have?
Yeah.
Right. I am a very, very gullible reader. If you're leading me to think something, that's what I'm going to be thinking. I'm not going to say what it was for people who may not have read Red Rising, but one of the very first twists in Red Rising, I was all in. I thought this is how things is. This is how the world is. Nope, not quite. But anyway, so I everything that I think Ed Crocker wanted us to kind of believe, I believed at the time. That's a twist. That's why I don't read synopsis, because twists always work well with me if I don't know it's coming.
We like the pleasant surprise.
I do.
Let the author tell us the story in a way that leads us down the paths that he's designed for us, and we will most enjoy the story that way. Makes sense to me. Yeah. So, interest in the sequel. I enjoyed this story. Again, the start was a little slow for me, but not so much that I ever thought I'm not digging this. I just kept going, hoping it was going to pick up, and it did. And I was fully engaged, and we get to the last parts where there's a lot of action going on. And I'm like, yes, I just got to keep reading. This is good stuff. So do I want the sequel? Sooner rather than later, please. Yeah, I'm definitely here for it. I'm very interested to see what we're going to learn about humans. I know there's a bigger role here. And we've got different theories. We've talked about it today as what role humans actually have in this world. I want to know who's right. What theory is what's really going on here. It's going to be a fascinating part of the story. Plus, I know we're going to get more about werewolves. We're going to get more about the sorcerers. This has piqued my interest. Eager for what's to come. Derek, how about you?
Yeah, I would say I'm interested in the sequel as well. A lot of that stems from just, like I said earlier, the world building, just kind of the mystery surrounding everything that's on this continent in these cities. I want to know more about that.
Matt?
I echo everything y'all said. Had I stopped, to stop myself at reading halfway through this book, I probably wouldn't have, even though I was beginning to become interested in the story, I probably wouldn't have wanted to continue. But the last half of this book definitely made me interested to know what else is going on with some of the twists and realizing everything isn't quite like you thought, building mystery upon mystery, because there was already certain mysteries, and building more mystery upon mystery. It definitely makes me want to see what else Ed has coming down the pike.
Yeah. So Mike, at Mike's Book Reviews, I know you're going to watch this episode later. We want to tell you missed out by DNFing this one. I get why you did it, but you stopped too short. He stopped about 35% in. I'm like, you just weren't far enough in. It's not that long a book. So you could have made it. I think you missed out by stopping. Yeah.
What were his reasons? I guess I haven't watched the video. I haven't seen it, but I'm curious if you remember what they were.
When he's looking at vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers, he's expecting certain things. It parallels what Matt said a lot, and he wasn't getting it. The stuff that he really likes about those characters, that's not what's here in this story, and it just wasn't doing it for him. And so he's like, I'm going to let it go.
And I think when he saw that Sam was a major focus of the story, he wasn't very interested in Sam's character, as well as he didn't like the political structure, which is interesting because Red Rising, which is one of his favorite series of all time, has
I don't think he gave it enough of a chance. Now, I will say, those of you watching this video, if you've completely ignored us and you've watched this whole video and you've not read Lightfall, we did not tell you everything. There's still value in going in and digging into this book. I think you'd enjoy it. You certainly heard enough here from us that you should be interested. But please don't think we've ruined it for you. No, there are things we did not tell you. There are events that happen that are very cool that you can discover for yourself and better understand what we're talking about here. So this rolls us into our rating and recommendation of this book. For me, it was actually a 5-star read. I thoroughly enjoyed the story. It little slow getting going, but once it got going, it got. And it had some really cool elements to it. Fresh perspectives on the way to use werewolves and vampires and sorcerers. It's hard to find fresh things these days. This had a fresh take. I love that. And I cared about what's going to happen to the characters now. I'm really reading a book for a good story. And I felt like I got a good story. So, 5-star. I would recommend it to anyone who enjoys a good epic fantasy tale that you don't have to get too deep in. And if you particularly enjoy vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers, we're going to drop them into a fantasy world and let's have a little fun with it. And there will be a lot you'll enjoy in that sense. Just don't look for horror. It's not a horror story. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, so I had to go back and look at Goodreads, what I had rated it, but I rated it 4 stars. But now that's for me, because it wasn't 4 stars through the first half of this book for me. So that is, I would say that that's a very positive 4 stars because he pulled me into the story when I thought I wasn't going to be pulled into the story. So I give it 4 stars, but an impressive 4 stars, which I think 4 stars is already impressive. But
Right.
to pull you back into the story when you thought you were out, he did a good job with that.
And Derek?
I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. It was a good story to me. I didn't think it was great, but there's enough there to interest me and want to keep going. As far as recommending it, I'm pretty sure this is the first vampire book that I've read. I've watched some vampire TV shows. True Blood is the one that kind of comes to mind right now, but so it's not like I'm completely unfamiliar with them, but it was obviously different from that. So
You're not a Twilight fan, are you?
No, I haven't read or watched those.
That's okay. People can be Twilight fans. I just can't help making fun of Twilight.
Well, I would say this isn't Twilight. This isn't Salem's Lot, which is on the top side, I believe, of vampire stories, but it's also not Twilight.
No one's glittering in this one. So we average out to a 4 amongst the 3 of us then. And that's still, better than average for a story. And again, the first book, a debut novel for this author. So hopefully, again, if you haven't read it yet, we've piqued your interest. You ought to go take a look. You might find something worthy and enjoyable for you. If you have read it already, or if you're going to read it now, whatever, if we've generated some thoughts, put them down in the comment box and let us see what you're thinking. I'll read and respond. If it's something you want to know directly from Matt or Derek, I'll make sure they see your comment. Or you could comment directly to them. Again, links to their channels are in the show notes, and you can find other ways on their channels of where you can connect with them. Because, we're on social media, we're out there in various places, and we like talking about books with people. It's a thing. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure again to spend time with you here talking about a fun book. We got to figure out what we're going to read next now.
I think it's your decision this time, Jim.
Ooh. All right. Well, I got ideas. We'll talk, but not on air. Y'all have to wait to see what we're going to come up with next.
Thank you.
But who knows? A couple of months down the road, watch for another episode. Thanks for being here with us all. Derek, Matt, thank you for your time here today. This has been fun.
Thank you.
We have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
We'll talk to you all next time.